I think that it would be most prudent if the state would research their jurisdiction qualifications in this.
Their jurisdiction and qualifications are defined by the Fifth Amendment. It says they can do it.
But the incorporate, okay, all right.
Could we hold up to
The articles.
we have sort of a long, we will get to questions, could we
They're
hold
going to
up
get to that when he gets done with his speech, okay?
Yeah, okay. Also, liberty amendments by people, rush to the point of, all right, what are we going to propose? All right, again, that's up to our delegates, okay? That's up to us, we the people, to influence our legislature and our delegates. But we reference Mark Levin's the Liberty Amendments because Article 5 is the focus of his book, and he's addressed a number of potential amendments and how he would recommend doing it. It's food for thought. It's good information. I encourage everybody to read it. I thought it was a good book. Chapter 1 is the most important thing. It talks about this whole process and why it's necessary. But if you get past chapter 1, I guarantee you're going to read the other chapters. Each other chapter addresses particular amendments he would propose and how and why he would do it. But again, the Convention of States is not supporting or trying to put forth any amendments. We are here to put forth the process of convening a Convention of States. We talked about some of the objections, and it's important to understand the objections. I mean, to make up your mind, you have to educate yourself on both sides of the fence. I've got a few of the more popular ones up here, but people feel that Congress isn't adhering to the Constitution right now, and the lines between the judicial, executive, and legislative branches are getting awful blurred. Part of that reason is that Congress isn't acting on the Constitution. They're allowing the Supreme Court, they're allowing words to be twisted, and again, this goes into everybody's different viewpoint, but they're allowing things to happen, all right? Congress is supposed to hold the purse and establish the laws, and if they don't act, how can we expect them to act in proposing amendments to correct themselves? They're not acting on what's going on right now. So again, a driving force for the states to step in and take this charge. Runaway convention. This has become very popular in Indiana. I've experienced this in several places. I'm not quite sure why. I've really tried to research this to see where this language is coming from. There was no runaway convention. First of all, the Constitution, the Constitutional Convention came out of the Articles of Confederation. We had 13 states then. The Articles of Confederation said to amend the Articles required unanimous. All states had to agree. Well, all 13 states at the time did agree. When they formed the Constitution, they recognized that as this country grew, it was unlikely that larger numbers were going to all potentially agree. So out of that came, in our Constitution, the 2/3 and the 3/4 for ratification. But there was no runaway. They decided that what was there was a good first step, but it wasn't the best step. And so out of that effort came our Constitution. And we've only had one Constitution. We've got 27 amendments. 10 of them came up shortly after the Constitution as our Bill of Rights. And it hasn't been a runaway since. The process has been followed to the letter since. Nullification I touched on a little bit earlier. I'd love to see states nullify. But it's not in the Constitution. It again is a way to twist things. If it works, hey, great. I don't have a problem with people nullifying something, but we think that the path identified in the Constitution is the way to go. Article 5 clearly sets forth these rights, and it's there in black and white, and we should follow it. Okay, but the choice is yours. There's really only 4 alternatives. We can keep trying to get Washington to fix itself. That, in recent years, that hasn't worked very well, from my perspective. We can hope that something else will be dug up or discovered in the Constitution, like nullification. Like I say, that's been tried several times, and in each case the Supreme Court has cut it down. We can choose to do nothing with, which I think, frankly, the vast majority of us do is do nothing, and that's why we are where we are. So, or we can use this process, encourage others to educate themselves and to pick up the ball and run with it with, you know, people that are convinced. My idea here is that if you leave this room and you go back and you educate yourself and you sign the petition, you are going to be our best supporter, because you've picked up that ball, you've taken that responsibility, you've convinced yourself. I'm not here to try to convince you. So all I'm here to do is to try to get you to dig into the facts. You're here out of interest. Keep that interest moving and dig into the facts. These are some of the people nationally that support us. We've got some literature over here with this on it. Here's the status of this so far. We have 3 states that have followed this process all the way through. Their applications are sitting with Congress right now. Hail to Alaska, Georgia, and Florida. Okay? The big news is that we have 31 other states that have this on their floor right now. So if we can get all of them past it, we got our 34, we got our 2/3. Indiana's coming. We don't have this moving yet as fast, but we've moved like light years just in the last several months, and we're picking up a lot of steam. We're in the ranks of having 100% of our districts represented. So you can see the states that are here, and there's growing grassroots effort in support of this. 95% of all of the districts in the country have had a petition filed in them, to give you a sense of how this is caught on. So sign the petition if you're so inclined. Educate yourself and sign the petition. Tell your friends and family and other groups about this. We speak at other groups. I go around the state. I'm happy to come and talk about this. I'm excited about it. I feel strongly about it. Organize groups. Contact your legislator. Last week we delivered packets to all representatives in the state of Indiana. We spent the day at the State House. Every single House and Senate member got a packet with the information that is on the website. Okay, we printed stuff up, we gave them a packet to educate them about this. We've had discussions, Mark Meckler and Michael Ferris have spoken with Senator Long and have talked to him about the importance of getting the language right, and they're working with him on that. And again, get it out to as many groups. If you can get 2-3 groups organized, your district you have district captains in many of the districts. Find out who they are. You can contact us. We'll let you know, and we can get some groups organized to talk to them. It's all about having more like this and getting the grassroots going. Support your district captains with information and help that they need. They're at the grassroots level. They're doing all the work. And we have several districts where we don't have a district captain yet. So if you are so inclined to volunteer, we'd love to have you on board. And again, conventionofstates.com.
Okay, we have the 3x5 cards passed around the room. If you can pass them to the outer aisle, we'll have somebody pick them up and bring them up, and we'll ask the questions. I'd like to introduce the rest of the head table. Diane Gomez is the state director of the Convention of States project. Paul Horvath is a district captain. Or where are you from?
House 40.
Okay. Okay. We have a couple of district captains in the room. Daniel Millen is one. Brett Gentry. And Marilee Mills is one. So we have several in the room. And I am also. We'd like to pass the hat to help us pay for the Chick-fil-A. And please help yourself. We still have some chicken strips over there. They're good. So we'd like to pass the hat for that and help with Marty's travel expense.
So are these
Appreciate it.
questions about the procedure or what they want to have happen? Because one point might be that if they're not paying attention to the Constitution now, what makes anyone think that they're gonna
Okay,
pay
Jennifer,
attention to
just
the
write out
Constitution?
your question, write out your question on a card, and we'll take it in order with all the other questions.
We don't know what it's about. Could anybody tell us?
Go ahead and write a question.
What is it about?
Okay, you have,
I put it out there.
Well, why don't you write it and hand it in like everybody else is?
And also, as the
waste of
piece of paper I handed you,
Right.
it says the
bring it
limit
up and I'll start asking.
financial restraints.
Let me ask. Okay. Okay, thank you. As a staunch opponent to the Convention of States movement and ignoring and ignorance of what I think is a really questionable plan of the COS, and just for the heck of it, say unicorns do not exist and everything goes as planned, here's my question. Taking into consideration the current crop of elected officials, both federal and state level, how can you guarantee they will suddenly start adhering to new amendments to the Constitution when they don't do it now? What really will change other than opening Pandora's box to the progressives who are fully behind the COS movement?
Okay, that's a good question. I don't know any progressives that are behind the Convention of States movement, and the reason I say that,
George Soros.
no, George Soros is not. George Soros is after our personal freedoms. This has nothing to do with our personal freedoms. This is not First Amendment, Second Amendment. This is the federal Constitution, okay? So let's start like this, if you will. Liberals, progressives, have grown since the Wilson administration because of Washington capturing more and more power, all right? History supports that. I don't need to debate it. The issue here is, and it's a valid concern, why will they follow something when they're not following it now, all right? Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know. I don't know that any of us knows, but I think that limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government as a focus is going to, the drive there is to have our delegates come up with amendments that tighten that noose, that tighten the ability to deviate from our Constitution, to try to get back to the intent. Lawyers have historically, and I don't have a problem with lawyers, I never was one. I never met one I really liked, but I've met several that have taken a lot of my money. But nonetheless, you know, they're experts at deconstructing sentences. Our founding fathers were simple men. Most people are simple people. We read a sentence as a sentence. Lawyers tend to deconstruct these things and start picking on words and taking pieces of the sentence in different directions. If you ask Congress right now, why aren't you following our Constitution? They would say we are following our Constitution. Now that might not be our opinion, but they would say they are, because who's challenging them? Congress isn't challenging itself, and they just point across the street to the Supreme Court and they say, the Supreme Court hasn't told us we can't do this. You know, executive fiat turns into illegal citizens being granted licenses in California. They're illegal. What does the word illegal mean to most of us? Why does it mean something different to other people? I don't know. So I don't know whether anybody's going to do anything better. All I know is that this is the best thing I've seen come up yet. All right, it's in the Constitution. It's never been tried to the extent we're trying to drive it. And I feel more comfortable about reaching out to my local representative and influencing him and standing on his front doorstep, or getting 100 of my friends down to tell him what we want, and to have that move up through my legislature. I trust the state of Indiana. I'm from here. As I've traveled around the country, I comment constantly about the lack of common sense that I grew up with here in Indiana. Especially the further east and west you go, the further divorced they get from any sense of common sense. So, hey, you know, will they do it? I don't know. But again, it comes back to us. We, the people, started this. We, the people, have to carry the water and make this happen. We can't rely on anybody anymore. That's what I've learned out of this. I can't rely on Washington. I can't rely on anybody unless I take, and my friends and as many people as possible take steps to correct it. And are they going to do what you want? Only if you get the masses moving. Only if you get the masses moving. You know, they respond to two things: money who buys votes, and masses of people.
And if you're done, I wanted to address the George Soros. Oh, it's just short.
Yeah.
I'd like to address the George Soros business because I've seen a lot of that on the internet. You know, the internet is the Wild West right now. Anybody can get out there and write anything, and they've implied that we are involved with George Soros, which is really ludicrous. This is our application here, and I'll read you the portion that has the key language. This is what we want each state to pass. The legislature of the state of blank hereby applies to Congress under a provision of Article 5 for calling of a convention of states limited to proposing amendments to the Constitution that 1, impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, 2, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and 3, limit the terms of office for its officials and for members of Congress. George Soros does not want to do any of this. We have to get 34 states to pass this exact application. George Soros is involved with a group called Wolfpack. They are interested in overturning Citizens United. So they have a separate application that says exactly that. They also have to get 34 states to pass their application. I think they have 2 states so far that have passed it. I believe it's Vermont, maybe California, if I'm remembering correctly. Oh, in New Hampshire. They will be able to get a few more liberal states on board, and you're going to hear a lot of ballyhooing when that happens. The states largely support the Citizens United decision, so it does not look likely at all that they will be able to get that through. Whether or not they do, it has nothing to do with us. To say that we are working together is false.
And if they do, and they get, you know, 2/3 of the states to pass their petition, yeah, I mean, that's the will of the people. That's we the people. You know, so I wouldn't be voting for that, but, you know, I'd be voting for this. Anything that moves this forward, you know, it could be several things. The state of Georgia had a number of different applications. They signed this, they moved it forward. They signed the other ones too, because they're trying to do everything they can by whatever means they can to limit the power of the federal government. Oh, you wanted to say something?
You asked why would they listen to us? Why would they change things? And in this resolution, I'm going to give you the answer. It says impose fiscal restraints. There are no fiscal restraints on the federal government's ability to fund money, to take it, to print it, to borrow, whatever they need to do. There are none. This calls for fiscal restraints. Because they have the money, they have the power. If they want to do a welfare state, they can do a welfare state because we can't stop it. Now, if you control the money, you control the power. Thank you.
But that's not true. Spending is supposed to originate in the House of Representatives, not the U.S. Senate. That is in the Constitution already.
That's right.
And guess what they've done the last 2 years? Originated the spending bills and the bank bailouts in the U.S. Senate. They are ignoring the rules. They don't follow the rules they have.
That's exactly the point. That's why the states need to cause, that's why this is in there, for the states to step in and hold them in check.
Yes, we already have that rule.
We have that rule, but it's not tight enough. So the states can step in and call for fiscal responsibility without printing the money, without taxation. That's how you can tighten it up. Now you got a budget that is fixed to the GDP or some other things. Again, up to the delegates, okay? Let's walk before we run.
It doesn't matter what rules you impose on Washington. You cannot legislate morality with immoral people.
Okay, then your choice is to do nothing.
Right. I'm just
And you go
telling
home.
you the
I mean,
reality.
that's fine, that's your choice, that's your fine. I don't believe that that's the reality, okay? Because I don't accept that as a solution. So I want to try to change this.
What could we lose?
Yeah.
Everything. Everything.
If we tried it?
Yes.
Okay, let's do these one at a time. There are 2 hands in the middle of the room.
We got more
Let's go.
cards.
Let's go to one of them, please. Put your questions on cards. Don, you had a question.
Well, more or less a statement. We can either have faith in someone or something, or we can have faith in no